Candle? We just chilling.
Yeah. She said she was waiting wholly. Can you feel so good, right? Yeah. So pretty quick before the music stop.
Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to just come and to share a word of encouragement, Lord, and just in this session of life. In Jesus'
Let's make this. She was in your this. I hope she's in the come on.
So, welcome to Couples Talk. We hope that you've been having a good day. This evening, we want to talk about a topic that is not necessarily one that many takes as the first option, which is marriage counseling. It's not something that we get up every day and say, hey, I want to sign up for marriage counseling. So we want to have that conversation. Does marriage counseling work? And that could be take a different perspective. Another way you should ask is, why should I even bother taking marriage counseling? Why aren't we taking marriage counseling? Why aren't we doing counseling? What are the reasons why counseling is not something that is, as problems occur, why is there such a reluctance towards counseling, especially as a couple? And why are persons either not approaching it together? In many respects, one might decide to be more in favor of the other. So we want to just have that conversation. Charlie, when you think of marriage counseling, what comes to mind? Is this something that you saw as favorable? Is there something that you had concerns or reluctance about when it comes to marriage counseling?
Actually, honestly, I don't think I truly understood what marriage counseling was until we got married. You just think that, you have premarital counseling, you get married, everything will go rosy. And then if you're about to divorce, then you run for counseling to save it. But I don't think I truly understood until after of how valuable it could be to have a third person professional, someone with some level of intelligence or a skill set that we wouldn't have because we would be too emotionally stricken by the situation to provide some insight. So I think even after going through that and even being a counselor myself made me realize how valuable marriage counseling can be. Just like you would take care of your body, you need to take care of your mind. And in marriage, there's some emotional, mental, awareness that needs to take place. So I've learned the value of marriage counseling, and I'm hoping even after discussion that you too may learn the value of it as well.
Thank you, Kirby, for letting us know our sound is working well. We've had so much sound issues in recording that I'm always skeptical just to make sure that we didn't go an entire live and then you didn't hear a word we said. So I'm happy to know that we're sounding good. The first question we want to look at is, why do people avoid couple counseling? And it's not always on one side. I think a lot of times there's one person that is recognizing this and saying, honey, should we go see someone?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you get that dreaded conversation about we need to go take our problems to somebody else, it invokes all type of emotions. And I can speak from a man's perspective. We were already thinking, you're trying to blame me, there is something is wrong with me. I'm already getting defensive. Like, what are you saying? What exactly are you saying? Why can't we just talk about, why do we need to go and talk to somebody else about our problems? It's like you have these phrases, why are you airing my dirty laundry to some stranger? So why? So let's discuss some of those reasons why some persons might have that issue.
Reason number one, they are embarrassed for people to know that they're going to counseling. Many times you're having issues and you might talk to a friend. The friend is not very good at giving you advice because they may be struggling as well, so they won't be able to give you proper advice. And then someone might actually suggest you do counseling, and you're thinking, why should we go to counseling? People's going to think something is wrong with us. But something is wrong. You need some assistance. But then it shouldn't matter what people think. The most important thing should be what is best for you and your spouse. In terms of healing, progress, getting to a better place, because you don't want to be in that state of regression forever. You want to be able to enjoy the moments of your marriage. You don't want to reach 40 years later on and you're saying, we barely had 5 good years of marriage and we could have avoided it because we could have gotten some additional help. So there's nothing wrong with counseling. And for those who might think there's something wrong and people might ridicule you, don't worry about them. Most of the time, they too need the help as well, and they don't see the need to go to get that help. And visualize company.
Another issue persons have is talking about the past is scary. It means you may have to bring up some things you're not proud about.
Mm-hmm.
You're hoping that the counselor don't ask you some questions, especially in front of your spouse, that now force you to answer something that you've been avoiding, and so that can be scary. And especially if you're talking about, I am going to pay, and we're talking here going to do professional counseling. So this is a service. You're going to pay someone to hear your problems. And just the whole thought of that sounds like a waste of money. Why am I paying somebody to just hear my problems? I'm already hearing my problems every day. I don't need to go pay someone to hear my problem.
Who are you paying every day to hear your problems beside the counselor?
Yeah, that's my whole point. Why am I paying this woman, this guy for them to tell me I have a problem?
Maybe to bring awareness.
But it may sound like that there is much value coming out of that, only until you have gone through a cycle where you just can't seem to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You've ever approached a conversation, you told yourself, I'm going to have this conversation with my spouse. You've plot out in your mind everything you're going to say, how you're going to say it. And no matter what you do, it end up in an argument. You don't even understand how you got it, because you knew this was not my intention in having this conversation. I already rehearsed what I'm going to say. And when she says this, I will say this. And you rehearse, and somehow it ended up with kumbaya, you're hugging each other, and you understood, and it never worked out like that. And there's where you may find yourself having a third party that is professionally trained, that understand the psychology, that understand the habits and the behaviors that even in ourselves over years we have been cultured that we can't see it. And it's hard for you to identify that. And it is hard to sometimes get that counseling from your spouse. Here's why. No matter how much you try and think, well, I love this person loves me. When this person is giving you counsel, especially at a point where maybe you haven't gotten there, you're already thinking that this person's have an agenda, meaning they want to win the argument. You know, there's a fight. This person thinks you're wrong and you think they're wrong. So if they come and they're trying to tell you something, you're already saying, you have an ulterior motive. You're only saying that because you want to win the argument. And having an alternate person really, really brings that up. So I laughed at me because I think I went way beyond even the point here, right? But I just had to really share that. Kirby says here, I think sometimes people don't like dealing or facing the bad things in their relationship. They're also afraid of how they look to the public, so they keep avoiding it. They don't like feeling vulnerable. I see that's such a big word, Kirby. The vulnerability is something that we run from it. We think it makes us weak when we could find so much strength in being vulnerable. It's such an ironic thing, knowing that you are a person with these feelings don't make you weak. Embracing it and acknowledging that I feel hurt under these circumstances, being able to embrace that and lean into it, but recognizing that you don't need to stay in this place is a good point. I think when we avoid situations, we get into a sense of denial, then we don't deal with situations.
Yeah, it gets worse.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you for joining us. Now, our next point there, Shani, says
they think counseling is only for huge problems. You know, as I mentioned earlier, oh, well, we had a little fight, he's not washing the dishes when I want him to wash the dishes, or he might toss his clothes there, he'll say I do something, and then we're thinking, we don't need counseling for that. But then all these things build up over time, and then they reach a point where you're on the brink of divorce, and you're looking back thinking, how did we get there? Because you see all these small things that you didn't deal with escalated to this one big thing, and by this point in time, you're now wondering, how do we deal with it? How do we face these issues? And if it is you haven't lost all the love and you go to counseling and you're realizing, these are things we could have been dealing with all the time. So even with the missteps that you're going through in your marriage, counseling is just a rejuvenation. It's sort of like a vacation. If you, in a way where you go, you find a way to recuperate, get back to a good place, learn some proper techniques, and then you go back and you go through life, and then of course you might sink again, and then you go through it. It happens, these things happen. But it's not something to look at bad and doesn't have to wait until things get really bad. You can use it periodically to get some help. Just like you go by the doctor to get some medical help, you go back counselor to get some emotional help.
All right, good point. Number two, is couples counseling only for persons on the verge of divorce? And I think you kind of alluded to that in the last point. I think it's a good step if you're at a point of divorce. It's much better than simply divorcing, right?
Please note, if the person's about to kill you, don't say we said that you're supposed to stay married and stay in the home. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, abuse. Have to throw in the disclaimer. I don't want somebody to say we're forcing these things. No, we're not talking about that type of issue. Please know those are those that you need to seek help for. Professional help, whether it's the police, whether it's the medical team, we're not referring to that. Okay? Disclaimer to run out. All right, continue.
Right. We go to the dentist and we do a checkup ever so often, and you do a clean. Because you recognize you started feeling something, you started feeling a numbness there, you started recognizing something there, and you go to the dentist, and you don't necessarily see that, but it's an investment in the longevity of your mouth. If you wait until the tooth is rotten, by that time the dentist might, it might be too far gone that they may have to tell you, I might have to take it out and put in something artificial or so. If it's never really the same. And sometimes we could recognize things in our marriage is a bit shaky. As I said, it's sometimes it's not major thing, but you find yourself just going around in circles. You find yourself having the same arguments over and over. Maybe not to the point that you feel, well, this may cause us to separate, but you just don't feel like you're connecting. You feel like the person don't understand you. The best time to address these things is before it gets worse. When it's only something that it's getting there. So to me, that investment, and that's how you got to look at it. It's an investment. It's not an expense. Your well-being is one of the most valuable thing you could have. Your peace of mind, being stress-free and so forth, is an investment into your longevity. There is one of the biggest killers in life is stress.
Yeah, and number one.
Part of your stress is your family situation. Is one of the most stressful thing that you could have in your marriage, right? So this is an investment. That's one of the things you want to look at it. You don't want to wait until you're divorced. So it's simply saying here, no, it's not. It could help you navigate the small problems in your marriage. And there's a text that is taken here. Charlene, you could read that for us.
Proverbs 12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise.
All right. Third question, Charlene, you can take that.
What should I do if my spouse does not want to join me for couple counseling? So what should I do?
As I said, it depends. This might happen on both cases. I think men are usually guilty. We are not prone to want to talk about our problems. And depending on who's the counselor might make it even worse. I think there's where being, finding the right counselor is also important. It may help with some of the resistance. But what happens if you recognize there's a problem? We've identified that maybe we really need to seek help, and you've had that discussion, but one person is not there yet to have counseling. What should you do?
First, you need to find out why it is they don't want to have counseling. I know you might be thinking, really, it's that simple? I don't mean it's that simple, but you need to know. I mean, don't start an argument, but have a conversation. Because at least you need to have an idea what could be some of the resistance. I mean, there are many factors why they may not be interested or be avoiding counseling. They may not want to go with you. So one we might have is a financial issue. They may not see the value of spending the money for counseling. They may think it's too expensive. They may think they don't have money to waste on this because, as Joshua mentioned before, they don't see it as an investment. They think it's wasting of money. So it's like, why am I going to spend all this money on counseling? Why am I going to waste all this money? I have better things to do with the finances that I have. But always think of your marriage, anything to help it, as an investment. So if it is you have to pay a counselor, that's an investment for the future. When you're going on a vacation, you don't consider that wasted money because you don't get it back. You consider an investment to rejuvenate your marriage. Counseling is the same thing. Uncomfortable discussing issues. Sometimes we have some problems we might be going through, and sometimes you don't feel comfortable stating what the issues are. As we mentioned before, one may not be as talkative as the other, so having to divulge this information in front of a stranger can be uncomfortable. And of course, it might be some information you have to divulge that your spouse, your partner is not aware of. So that would be an uncomfortable situation. So you'll try to avoid counseling for those reasons.
But I mean, this is a question though. What should you do? I mean, do you try to find out? But outside of that, what do I do? The other person do not want to see counseling. I mean, these might be reasons why they don't want to see counseling. But I want to know, what should I do if the other person don't want to?
Well, after it is you have a conversation with them and you find out and you come up with these reasons why it is they don't want to have counseling. If it is you're a Christian, I would advise you to pray about it. And then sit down and have another conversation with them, letting them know how you feel, letting them know how much you value the marriage, and letting them know that the reason for you choosing for you to go counseling is not to attack them. It's not to make them feel less than they are. It's not to make them uncomfortable, but it's to bring you both back to a place of where you first started, when you had this joy, this love for each other. You know, you were happy to be around each other. You just want some further insights on how to make things better. Let them know your reasoning without arguing. Talk to them, you know, encourage them. Let them know that you want the best for the both of you. And that's the only reason why it is you're asking them to go to counseling. You don't want to wait on things are really bad, where you're about to divorce and then now you're trying to fix the problem. Let them know that you love them, and all this is because of the love that you have for them, why it is you want to engage in counseling.
One of the things I would say, if your spouse is not ready to have couples counseling, my advice is that you start. There is a certain, and don't pressure the person. Indicate that you want this marriage to work. And if you're not ready yet, I understand, but I think it's important to me. And as long as it's not a financial situation, my advice to you is to start the process. One of the biggest change you could do for your marriage is you.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be you changing to the point of doing certain things better, but it might be to understand better why is some of these things happening, and to develop the strength and the ability to look at it through different lenses, and to maybe find different coping mechanisms so that you could be at a better place. You see, as you get to a better place and you get stronger, and you become more aware of the situation and the things and why you're going around in circles, you at least remove one of the obstacles, which is you find yourself fighting less. The relationship and the person also starts seeing a change in you. You know, the arguments that used to keep you in a circle, you break that circle. You're not having those same arguments because you don't want to go down that road. You know where it's going to lead. What you find is that it may create an atmosphere where the person is seeing the growth and seeing a change that is taking place, and without much prompting, they themselves may say, you know, there's something I see different here. Let me see. Ideally, they may hopefully decide to join you at some point. Irrespective if they don't, you will be at a better place, and you would at least have gained some tools to better cope in your marriage.
Yep. How should I approach couple counseling? How should I approach couple counseling? How do you think I should approach it?
I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is to have an open mind. I could tell you, when we first started couples counseling, I went into it already saying this man is going to tell me all my problems, and I already go in there to defend and to fight my position. It wasn't the right, you know. It really took a professional to see where I was coming from, and to really beat me down. But if you don't go into the situation with an open mind, not just looking to plead my case, it's like you're going into a court scene and you're already thinking, well, she coming to defend her case, I'm going in to defend my case, and we're going to see what the judge is going to tell us, who wrong, who's right. But this is not about who's wrong and who's right. There's a problem. This is your spouse. You want to somehow find a place where you could be happy again. That because before this, when you started dating, there was there's a certain level of joy you had, and you want to be able to recapture that. What has happened? How did we get it? Did we miss certain things? So to me, one of the things I would say is to approach this with an open mind. Kirby, one of the suggestions you made against the first question is what you should do, and this is we did a video on this in terms of the War Room. There is so much lessons that comes out of this movie. and there's nothing that beats prayer. So I think this is a very good point, especially where your spouse do not want to, they're not at that stage to make the change. They don't want to see the counseling. I see that there was a lot of great principle that came out from the war room, where that spouse was able to strengthen herself through prayer, and to start the change within herself and to get to a better place even before the other spouse was there. So very, very, very good point there. So how should you approach this, Charlie?
Make sure you're both 100% invested in attending therapy together. So, as a couple, you both agree now that you're going to do counseling. You both must be invested. You both must be agreeing, and you must put in 100%. Not I put in 50 and you put in 100, or I put in 50 and you put in 75. We both must be willing to go with this in 100%.
In addition to that, discuss shared goals for therapy with your spouse. It would be nice to know, what do we want to accomplish out of this? Why are we going this?
Right.
Are we going here just to see who's right and who's wrong? Or do we want to have a better marriage? Or do we want to be able to come out of this in a win-win scenario? So if you're able to discuss that even before you go in, so that you're clear as to what your expectations are. And to be honest, if you don't know, say, I don't know, but I want to at least try. If that's where you are, it's okay to be honest enough and say that's where you are. So at least you're not giving the other person's false expectations that this is the case. Be honest. The best thing you could do for each other is to be honest, have an open mind, but to give it a try. And to don't go in there already thinking this is going to be bad, this is going to be terrible, but you want to spend the money. Okay, well, I'm just going to turn up and sit down there. No, it's, if you're going to do that, it's best, you didn't attend. So don't go in there to create more of an issue. Going to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Search for the right counselor, one that is a good fit for both of you. You're looking for someone to counsel you. Don't just jump into any relationship with any counselor. You could even interview them. You go when you have the consultation, and you could see if this person works for the both of you. And many times you can feel the vibes. Can this person really help me and take me in the direction that I want to go? And of course, if you have preference in terms of religious values, that can also assist in terms of the type of counselor that you choose. So I would always encourage, search for the right counselor. Always make sure that they work for you. So it doesn't mean that every counselor that comes in your way would work for you.
And what comes to mind here, it's not a counselor that simply is telling you what you want to hear. I think it's important for you to be able to find someone to tell you what you need to hear. There are times that a counselor might truly challenge you in some areas that you might feel uncomfortable. But some of the best growth comes from being able to overcome uncomfortable situations and to be able to, and having to answer uncomfortable questions. So don't just see it as someone that sits with you and just talks nice with you. You really need someone to be able to get to the issue and to ask the hard questions that you might be uncomfortable of, even, or you may not have you haven't maybe gotten to ask your spouse some of those hard questions. Sometimes getting it or being asked that from a third person that don't have any ulterior motive and they have an objective point of view, it just makes that easier for you.
Prioritize that first appointment schedule. You guys came up, you decided on the date that you're going to have your session. Make that a priority. Cancel whatever it is you had that is going to block you from making that session. Because you see, turning up on that first session, it shows your spouse and yourself, and even the counselor, that you're serious about getting help, you're serious about making changes. So take pride in that first appointment schedule.
Very good point. And be prepared to talk. I know this is hard, especially for some men, myself included, where you have a challenge of being or feeling like you're being judged, or feeling like you are here on trial. So you're only saying on a need to base, one word responses, and so be intentional about talking, sharing what is troubling you. It's an important part of this process. You remember, You're here because there is an issue. So be open enough to recognize there is an issue, and to be prepared to talk. One of the other scripture reference here we're taking from Proverbs chapter 11 verse 14 says, where there's no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. And I want to say that this is good counsel. You could get a lot of counsel for and it could be bad counsel. So I would want to also say that it is good counsel that you want to try to have. And as you know, this is a little bit more touchy, especially for Christians. I think Christians has an obstacle where they think because we're practicing Christians, we should just be able to go to and pray to God and just solve our problems. And seeing a counselor, in some respect, for some people, think it means that I am a false Christian, because a true Christian shouldn't have need for a counselor. I should be able to simply pray and solve all my problems. After all, God answers all questions. God is bigger than my problems. And we could get very caught up in a Christian paralysis that we tell ourselves, taking this act of going to see a counselor is a sense of failure on your part as being a Christian. What would you say to somebody like that, Charlie?
Well, I'm an advocate for mental health. So, as I always tell persons, the same way you'll walk into a doctor's office because they need checkup. Okay, you want to make sure your body parts are working. You want to make sure your heart is pumping right. You want to make sure that your lungs are operating right. You want to make sure that your liver is clean. You want to make sure all those things are working. It's the same way you need to make sure that your mind is working well. So going to a doctor, medical doctor, is valuable, and going to a mental health practitioner is also valuable. A psychologist, a counselor, therapist, whatever term they may call themselves or refer to themselves on, they are just as valuable for your marriage, just as seeing a doctor is also valuable for your health.
All right. And one other thing to note, there are many Christian counselors out there who assist by both combining biblical and psychological principle to help you and your spouse with life's challenges. So I do not think as being a Christian mean that you are a failed Christian if you are seeing a counselor. In life, we all need good guidance. We need counseling even along the way. Sometimes God may put the right counselor for you to guide you in there, and that's the journey of a Christian, that we are able to lift each other up. That's the whole process. When you fall down, that there's someone that is stronger, is there to lift you up. And that's how you should look at this journey, and not to think that I should be able to just pray my problems away and there's something wrong because I'm a Christian and I've chosen to take counsel. There is wisdom in recognizing that you need help as you get into this. And there's, I don't want to get very biblical, but my mind runs on someone like Moses, who at the time where he was the only one who was sharing all the load, and he got advice that you should share that burden, let others help with this. We don't have all the answers. And I think there is a certain wisdom in how God has given different persons different gifts. There are some persons that just have the gift of understanding and seeing through certain issues, and to be able to speak and give us good counseling in that situation. And that's just wisdom. And there is nothing wrong with that, even as being a Christian. That's not saying prayer is not important, but through prayer, God may guide you to the right person that not only might open the door for you, but for your spouse. Because you might be at a good place where you may be able to understand where God is working in your marriage. But sometimes your spouse might need an objective third party and someone else just to guide them along that way. So the third point there.
A Christian's counselor's ultimate goal is to aid in realigning your marital values to God's values. As a Christian, we all know we follow the biblical principles of what marriage is about. And when you engage with a Christian counselor, they would put you back on that path to where it is you need to go. So, obviously, where you have fallen short in terms of your marital values, they will help you to realign yourself and your spouse back to where God wants you to be. So, it won't be their values they'll be trying to encourage you to embrace. It will be God's value that they're trying to encourage to get you back onto that path. So there's good counsel, there's value in engaging with a Christian counselor, because at least for a Christian, is someone who understands your background, understands your beliefs, and will not be at discord in terms of guiding you on the path that you need to go.
Right. So again, just to take it in context, just remember what we're saying here. If you are a practicing Christian, there is nothing wrong with you seeing a counselor that would be able to help you and your spouse to get back at the right path in mind. And the last scripture reference we just want to share with you tonight is taken from Proverbs chapter 19, verse 20, that says, "Listen to counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter days." So, I mean, this is just what we wanted to share with you on our topic this evening in terms of, does marriage counseling work? And we believe if it is approached the right way, it's approached with an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the step to find the right counselor that fits your values and where you want to go, and that you're able to recognize that this is not saying that you have failed, but it's a recognition that you see the value in how important your marriage is. And this step of taking it to see a marriage counselor is actually an investment in your marriage.
Yep.
It's one that you could literally do in a context of just tuning up your marriage and not simply saying we have a problem. We are here because we can't be fixed. So I know this is not necessarily the sexiest of topics because we only somehow get to this when we're on the brink of divorce. But we want to encourage you, don't wait until the problem seems
Too
insurmountable for
Mm-hmm.
then you decide, well, let's now go and see a counselor. At that point, the other person might have gone
Too far.
too far, that even a counseling at that time may not be of any good, because a counselor can't do miracles. If one spouse have already really gone too far, their mind is made up, a counselor at that time is only delaying the inevitable. And because a counselor could only work with willing individuals that want to find the best for your marriage. If one person is already checked out, then it's too late. So my advice to you is that take this step at when you see the first signs that things is really not getting. Not every time you have a problem. That doesn't mean everyone needs to see a counselor. But there are times where you're starting to recognize that there's a pattern, and it seems like if you're not connecting with each other, right? So Wendy, yes, there's food for thought indeed. So thank you again for joining us. If persons would like to connect with you, Charlene, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
You can connect with us on our YouTube channel, which you're watching right now. You can like and subscribe, Vivid Resolutions, and watch all our videos on Couples Talks. And then you can also go to Facebook, Vivid Resolutions as well. And you can like that page as well. And you could follow us on our videos that we air weekly on Thursday evening. And of course, there's the website, vividresolutions.com. Yes, that's our name. So you can follow us on those 3 channels. And you can learn something about what it is we have to share. You can even share something that you have learned in your marriage that you would like others to know about. We're here to share with each other, to encourage each other, and to help each other grow. So, let's continue to support each other. And I hope to see you guys next week again.
All right. Enjoy the evening. We'll see you in our next live.
Okay, bye, everyone.